Hey everybody, this is Ken. I'll take these things out. I just want to talk for a minute about some of the stuff that we're seeing in the news lately. They're going way out of their way to try to make people believe that if you see something that looks real, sounds real, that it could be digitally managed to be fake. Kind of like they started out with Nancy Pelosi's drunken video. And they did that on purpose so they could lead into this new thing that they're doing, which is trying to get people to not believe anything that they see or hear with their own eyes or ears. The problem with that is all of those type of things can be digitally, forensically discovered. So what I believe they're trying to do is they're trying to build up the system that they want you to think that they cannot or that we cannot tell the difference between what's real and what's not real. Although we're going to sometimes have to wait it out just to make sure. There definitely is forensic evidence that is left behind when they digitally manufacture news or what have you. I just moved my sun visor so it wouldn't be hitting me in the face. I believe, and it's just my belief, that they're doing this on purpose because they know for a fact that they have a lot of video of Obama and George Soros at coffee shops around the Beltway. I believe they've been able to identify different people within those coffee shops. And as everybody knows, the NSA keeps everything for 5 years. So what they have is they have them talking on video where you can see them physically talking. But now they can link that up with the audio of what was being discussed. And the reason I think that's important is because George Soros, ever since World War II, all he's ever done is, first he sent his own people to the Nazi death camps. That's if he truly was Jewish, which who knows whether that's true or not. But he tries to downplay it and say that he was just removing the people's property that went to the Nazi death camps. But all you got to do is use a little common sense. People are kind of goofy nowadays. They didn't leave those houses open to be pillaged by locals. He was there. He knows what he did. And he's going to pretend like he wasn't there when stuff... Well, let me tell you a story that I know of. Tibor Chalet, who owns a pawn shop in Avondale, Georgia, he was in the Hungarian Resistance Underground Fighters. He had been at a friend's house overnight, and he came around the corner just in time to see his mom she was half naked. She had a bag over her head. It was almost like they had pulled her out of the shower or something. But she had a bag over her head, and they were, for no better way of saying it, George Soros himself, who Tibor had pointed out to him, because Tibor was also 14 years old when George Soros was 14 years old, and he had George Soros pointed out to him, and was told, don't trust that boy. He's evil, and whatever you do, don't trust him. Don't trust him with information about your family, about whether you're Jewish or not. He's gonna talk, with his Jewish accent, and he's gonna try to, bring you in and make you think that he's one of you, but don't trust him. And so Tibor had already heard through the grapevine about this man named boy, actually, because he was 14 years old at the time, named George Soros. So when he came around the corner and he saw his mother with a bag over her head being kicked to a transport truck by George Soros, he openly said this to me. This is in the mid-'80s when he told me this story. But when a man tears up and his voice cracks when he's telling you a story, It's kind of like when my grandfather had things to say about World War II. There was him and three of his brothers that fought in that war. One of them didn't come home. And he would do the same thing. He would talk about stories about people being shot next to him or having half their body disintegrated, And he would tear up and his voice would crack. And for that reason, I remember those stories very vividly. And George Soros was in the same situation. I had built a deck on the house that I'd rented from him and Margot Chalet. And then he saw what a great job I did on the deck that I built for him. So he asked me if I would help him build a studio underneath his pawn shop, because he had acquired a lot of film equipment. And he wanted to do commercial films for the corporations in Atlanta. There's a lot of corporations in Atlanta. And he wanted to see if he could advertise and do commercial films for those people. So he had a sound room set up, and he had to build it, and that's what he wanted me for. Double pane glass, and a big long bench where they could put the sound equipment in, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I did is I worked on that project for him for a couple of months. And I used to look forward to him coming down and sitting and eating lunch with me, because he had so many stories, being an older guy that he was. I like that about people. I like older people that have these stories that they can tell you. They can let you know things that happened in their life and stuff. And sometimes you get to learn from somebody else's mistakes, and sometimes you get to learn things that you wouldn't have known under any other circumstances. And so it was always very pleasant for me to listen to an old timer talk. Well, when Tibor was talking about what happened to him, he said he came around the corner and he saw his mom half naked with a bag over her head being kicked to a transport truck by none other than George Soros. And he said he didn't know if he let out a gasp because it was so shocking, or if they just had seen him. He didn't know either way, but that was the first time that he got shot at. He was a very tall guy, 6-something, and he was young and he was healthy, and he could run. And he ran and he ran and he ran and he ran until he couldn't run anymore. And he covered up with leaves. He slept just enough to get a little bit of rest. And he got up and he did it again because he was worried that, they'd put the dogs on him or something and find him. He ran through creeks. He ran through, the kind of things you would do if you were trying to flee somebody in a wooded environment. He of course, nowadays we have a different circumstances. Being in a wooded environment with infrared might not help you a whole lot. But anyway, in his day, he was able to get away. But he had ran and stopped, and ran and stopped, and ran and stopped. He did that so many times, he said he couldn't even remember how many times he had done it. He was finally laying half covered with leaves, and he was played out. He openly said, he felt like he was going to die. He didn't think that he would live through the night. It was getting chilly or whatever, and he didn't think that he would be able to survive another night. He had not eaten, or the only water he had drank was from creeks and what have you. So he hadn't eaten in quite some days, so that tells me he was at least 5 days running in the woods. And while he was laying there, just played out, just completely exhausted from running the last run that he had made, he said all of a sudden he was surrounded by people. He didn't know whether those people were Nazis or whether those people were just locals or something. He had no idea. But he knew at that point in time that he was done. And it just so happens that the people that found him were from the Hungarian underground, the Resistant Fighters Network. And so he was able to be saved by them. And that's why I get really upset when if you watch the 60-minute interview full of George Soros on YouTube, he'll say, you know, he did what he had to do to survive. Well, no, he didn't. Tibor did what he had to do to survive. Tibor, there's nobody in the world that would say that he wasn't a great American hero. And so that's how that goes. But going back to what people are saying about, whether something's real when you see it or whether it's been doctored when you see it, etc., etc., I believe that has to do with the conversations that Obama had with Tibor Chalet. Tibor Chalet, George Soros. George Soros ever since Tibor's the hero. George Soros, ever since World War II, has done nothing but look up Black Wednesday, look up George Soros 60 Minutes interview just to get a feel for the guy. But look up Black Wednesday. He took the English pensioners for $2.7 billion. His philanthropy that he talks about in that thing in front of the hospital in Haiti was just a photo shoot. Ask the people of Haiti today what they think of George Soros or the Clintons. They'll tell you. I mean, if you want to know the truth's out there. All you have to do is research it. But anyway, George Soros, what he's done with his so-called philanthropy is set up these NGOs and organizations and stuff to basically, he's working for two-class oligarchs. If you want to know the truth of that, then all you have to do is look no further than China. If you're 5 minutes late, you lose your whole month's pay. If you miss your quota, you lose your whole month's pay. If you're sick and you can't go to work, you lose your whole month's pay. People don't wear medical masks in China as a fashion statement. Just so you know. They literally cannot afford to be sick. Our founding forefathers made our Constitution to battle or to protect us against that same oligarch's dirty bag of tricks. And what I mean by that is we were in sweatshops just like the Chinese people are, packed in like sardines. People often would lose a limb or whatever. Nobody was there to help them. There was no fund to protect them. If they lost their arm, they lost their arm. And that's the kind of thing, even with child labor, that's the kind of way it was there. And people often climb to the tops of those sweatshops and jump to their death rather than live another day of their miserable, tortured lives of 80-hour work weeks with no breaks. If you don't make quota, you're out. If you lose your pay, et cetera, et cetera. The same thing's going on in China today. These one world order people, that's what they want. They want there to be nothing but the elites and the workers or the peasants. And the reason they want that more than anything else right now is because of this thing right here. It's called the information age, and it's exposing their crimes. And quite frankly, they're pretty horrifying, some of the crimes that they're getting exposed. So what they're doing is they're trying to beat the clock, if you will. They know that their crimes are being exposed. Everything from the Rothschilds and all the way down. It's just everything. They know everything's being exposed right now, and they don't have a good enough handle on these devices yet. Although they're trying really hard. Darfur was in America, which was set up by the CIA, who's not supposed to operate in America. And when everything went down for about 3 or 4 days over 2 months ago, that was so they could switch Darfur to China. They really are working. It's this simple, okay? Who do your politicians work for? Lobbyists, captains of industry, two-class oligarchs, or do they work for we the people? It's that simple. We have a chance with this one president who happens to own a family business that caters to the middle class people worldwide. Let's assume they're all self-centered, self-acting people. Okay? Most of them are two-class oligarchs. All they want is cheap labor. That's why you see the caravans coming across our border. They're trying to drive down the cost of labor in America. Okay? In Silicon Valley, I'm sure this deal was made with Hillary and her people. And we'll look the other way if you do this kind of thing. The Americans in Silicon Valley were given their walking papers. And they were told either you train your foreign replacement from India or you lose your severance package. Meanwhile, Hillary's in India wearing Indian garb, telling the Indian people, quote unquote, oh, Americans are just jealous of you because they know that you can do better in America than they can. This is what we're up against, people. We need to wake up. We need to acknowledge what it is. And please, hit subscribe, share it, do what you can. They've deplatformed me on Facebook. They will deplatform you if you are trying to share these type of posts. And I'm telling you right now, they're doing it for a reason. There's an election coming up. They don't want people sharing like Dave Janda's post or Dan Bongino's post or some of the other truth tellers that are out there that are simply telling the truth. Have I been vulgar? No. Have I lied about anything? No. Tibor Chalet told me that story himself. I'm telling you a story that Tibor Chalet told me, and he teared up and his voice cracked when he said it. The second time he got shot at, he was blowing up railroad tracks, and his best friend was with him. His best friend caught a round in the center of the chest because they were just trying to slow down the Nazi war machine. His best friend got a round in the middle of the chest, and he had to run away. There was nothing he could do. He knew when he saw that wound in the center of his chest that he was going to die. And he could either stay there while the bullets are zinging. And let me tell you, this is what he says about a bullet coming really close to you. It doesn't make a zzz like a normal bullet does when it goes over your head. It makes a bullwhip crack. And it sounds like bullwhips cracking all around you when they're coming really close to you. So, he got up and ran the way he knows to run, dodging and zigzagging and doing whatever he could to stay alive. And he did. He lived through through World War II. He came to America as a hero from the Hungarian Resistant Underground Fighters Network. That's the truth. Now, they'll try to block me. They'll try to block me in every way they can. They've blocked me from Facebook. They don't think I have enough followers here to make a difference. But people, if you share this, and you still have if you even still have a Facebook account, or you're like me where they've deplatformed you so you can't share. That's what's happened to me. And they have very funny ways of doing that. They take an old timer like me that's not exactly computer savvy, because I spent my whole life in a tree, cutting trees for a living. The third most dangerous job in the country. Somebody got killed in Gwinnett County, Georgia, every single year that I was cutting trees. I was doing business with a police officer's wife, and I saw murder money 3 days after the murder. And I testified against a police officer who murdered somebody. So I'm no stranger to danger. And, if they want to